Okay, friends. Now it's your turn. We'll need the microphone for the questions. So someone can walk that around, or we can just pass it around. Otherwise, the streamers cannot hear. So, how's your practice going? What kind of questions do you have in the midst of hurricanes, floods, fires, pestilence, etc.? Or what kind of wisdom to share? Hi, Melissa. New neighborhood. Oh, that's why you came? Yeah, yeah. Well, here we are with you.
What's that?
We're here with you.
Thank you. I'm here with you.
Yes, thank you. So, what's up, folks? Yeah, Susan.
You know, I don't know how to state the question. It's like I'm aware that I have circumstances in my life that make me very unhappy, and I'm being adverse to them, but I'm not having, I guess the thing is I'm wanting to know, what do I want to know? I mean, if I'm just with what's happening, I don't have an experience of what's happening at all. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, it's totally an intellectual thing on my part saying that I'm having an adverse reaction.
Mm-hmm. You mean you don't feel it?
I don't feel it.
Maybe it's not adverse. You don't feel upset, angry, frustrated, anxious.
No.
Good.
But no, but the circumstance, I mean, I'm definitely very unhappy by it.
Huh. Okay. You're unhappy, but you're not having big emotions.
Mm-mm.
Okay. Then what would be the question?
I guess my question is, I guess the thing is then, is it only if you have strong emotional reactions that you're having? I mean,
I think the kleshas can sound like they're pretty turbulent, anger, craving, like that. And yet, there's this kind of suffering called the all-pervasive suffering, is one of the phrases for it. It's simply the suffering of being in this realm where those can rise at any time, where we're in a body that's aging, gets ill, is dying without us, no control. I can't decide when I'm going to get sick, when I'm going to get well. So it's called all-pervasive because it's kind of like there's no particular thing happening, but it's the suffering of having a mind that's still samsaric and has taken on this kind of a body, which is a suffering body. This is so antithetical to our culture, which talks about, body wonderful and body can always be improved and life can be improved. And if you buy this and if you do that, and some sense, I remember until I was about 40, some sense of a trajectory that goes up, 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 better, 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 materially, spiritually, the world will get better, you'll get better, this will be better. And at some point, it's actually part of what led me to the Dharma, realizing that was not so. That was not so, and had never been that way. So it could be a part of that, and as we practice, we start recognizing that all-pervasive suffering piece, which is a little harder to recognize than the suffering of I'm angry. We can feel that suffering, or I'm craving, or I don't care about that person, the more obvious. But when we hit that, I say hit it like, it's not there, then it's there. When we experience that, one danger is kind of nihilism can kind of set in. A nihilism, a kind of a depression, like nothing matters, or I'm powerless. And we need to balance every time we're exploring suffering deeper and deeper, which we have to do. We have to do that. That's the first noble truth, the first and second. What is suffering and what causes it? We've got to get that in ourselves. And it's like a good diagnosis. If you don't diagnose, how are you going to meet the illness and get well? But in doing that, we can get pretty discouraged, like, oh my God, it is all suffering, right? And flatten out, depressed, powerless. So we have to remember the second of the Four Noble Truths, the third and fourth, the second set, which is freedom is possible. Nirvana is possible for us. Why? Because we have Buddha nature. And there's a path, and you've met it, and you can practice it. So these balance each other, and we have to use them that way. So whenever I get like that, I do more meditations on my Buddha nature, the Buddha nature of those around me, the possibility of full awakening, things that lift the mind. You can also start with simple metta, wishing everyone around you. If my mind starts going, like, for example, about a roommate, or someone in your house, your mind can start chewing away, or your spouse, or your kids, and just the simple thought of, oh, I see I'm doing that. I don't really want to. Wish them well. Just wish them well. May I be happy. May they be happy. That's the new habit to build. Does that touch it a bit, Susan? We don't have to have big clashes going on. Just being here in this kind of a suffering body is plenty. Yeah. But always balance. Some of us tend to be kind of giddy and excited, and you can pull open your Dharma medicine chest and remember everyone's going to die. That can sober you down. But some of us are too sober. We walk around very sober. We need to say, hey, I've got Buddha nature. That is like so cool. No one can ever take it away from me. It's going to be here life after life. No matter what happens, it's the thing that doesn't go anywhere, doesn't change, doesn't be something else. So as long as I work to develop it, it's going to show up more and more and more. So there's a kind of happiness that comes. We're on our way out of suffering, folks. We are. You wouldn't be here unless you were interested in that. Rises in the mind, and that's where it will end. And so in each moment of calm abiding, we're doing the very same practice. So you're in your calm abiding, and you're all caught up in a kerfuffle. You know, tonight I saw like 3 or 4 of my own, and I go, oh, okay. Am I willing to let go of this kerfuffle right now, in this moment, while I sit here? Just let go. That's the same skill as in our lives. Am I willing to let go of the argument, not try to be right, am I willing to look at what's going on for me and stop trying to fix the other person? That's the very same skill. That's why as we get really good at calm abiding, we get better out in the world. It's the same skill. Let go of the stories. We're making it up. Yeah, Emily? What?
I'm passing around.
Oh, I thought you got it for something from yourself.
So, you know, I've got 3 kids. How young is too young to introduce them to meditation?
Oh, I don't know. I introduced my cat once.
How'd that go?
Well, with one cat, it went really well because that cat had some karma. And the other cat, it was really bad. I mean, the one cat would come in and sit on my lap every time and stay and, you know, hear some mantra and stuff. The other cat, anytime I put him in the room, he'd bang at the door to get out. So, you know. So, you know, there's going to be no formula, Steve. You're gonna look at your kids and you're gonna see what goes on for them. But you can certainly invite them in, or leave the door open to where you do that, or say, Dad's gonna go sit quiet. If you want to come, you can do that. Do it with no expectation. That's quite helpful. I have 2 grandsons in Portland, and the 5-year-old, he's so interested in Buddhist stuff. It's interesting. One of his latest questions to me was, on Halloween, are you going to be a Buddha? And I said, I hope so. You know, and he talks about this as the place with the red pillows, because he used to come over to Monroe when people weren't there, and I let them romp around in the red pillow room. And he's just very curious, you know, and my other grandson's too young to really know, but may not be at all. So each person has their own karma with the Dharma. But yeah, I've read some articles by parents inviting them in. One of the things we do with the children's program here is show them an altar, you know, just a very simple one, and say this is a place where we can put a piece of candy, or we can put an apple, or we can offer something. Sometimes they really like to do that, or offer a cup of water. So that's one way to engage them. And maybe that's all they want to do. We are going to be starting the children's program again here when we have space fixed in the basement, so it could be a little while. And we're going to be inviting children from 5 to 10. So I'm thinking of this 5-year-old grandson, so we'll see if that can work. Yeah.
I guess I do have a question. I guess I can tell myself what I think would be the answer to this from a Buddhist perspective, but in light of all the things happening, the hurricanes and the floods and just everything in the world right now, how do you keep from going like apocalyptic and keep it in perspective while still knowing it's happening and being informed?
Yeah. How do you do that so far? Because you said you think you could imagine an answer. So let's start there.
Well, I've been pretty apocalyptic.
Which means what to you? End of the world? This is the end of the world?
Yeah.
Well, it might be.
Right. And just trying
We don't know.
Yeah. And
We're
I haven't
not
really
in charge of that.
Yeah, and I haven't really been able to sit with that, I guess.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you die, that's going to be the end of this world for you. So one way to get comfortable with this, frankly, is death meditation. You know, whether we die in an apocalypse or we die from getting hit by a car or we die from a virus or we die from old age, this world, you know, all your five senses are going to be shut down. Just start there. Just take a second and imagine you can't see, hear, smell, taste, touch. All that disappears. Think you're going to be comfortable with that? And then the mental sense, because in Buddhism, 6 senses, the mental sense will be functioning still. And so that's the sense we work on here now, the mind. So that when we are in an apocalypse or in our own death, we're in refuge. We're thinking bodhicitta. You can go into that state of mind. May I take a form that's useful to all beings in my next life? I mean, Bodhisattva path has all these marvelous things that I can't even imagine being able to do, but aspire to. You know, may I even be born in the deepest level of hell if that would be the most useful for others. And look at that kind of courage. So this is the kind of courage we want to foster in ourselves and bring forth every moment, so that when we slide into death, it's not a brand new thing. It's like, oh, I've been doing that. I've been doing that. You know. So, you know, it's really important to admit we don't know if this is the end of the world. But, you know, also, every night you go to sleep, that's the end of that world. You wake up. Every moment ends, and you start a new one. We're used to this, but we don't pay attention to what's going on. You know, we think change isn't happening. It's so funny. So we don't know. That might be too much. But meditating on death and the inevitability of it really does help you live life in this moment. So if this was the apocalypse, well, look at the moment you're in. This present moment seems pretty stable in a way. And then we work on being ready for that with our bodhisattva path. It's a brave path, but it's also a path that is really full of joy. I mean, you can't trick a bodhisattva once they get going. I'm not one, but you can't trick them because because there is no attainment bodhisattva. In the heart of Wisdom Sutra, there's this beautiful line, because there's no inherent attainment or non-attainment, there's nothing to really get or throw away. Bodhisattvas rely on and abide in the perfection of wisdom. Their minds have no obstruction and no fear. Passing utterly beyond perversity, they attain the final state beyond sorrow. That's what we're aiming for. But we start where we are. So look at your fear, and that's the death meditation helps you do that. How afraid are you of letting go of this body? And then you can analyze, what am I letting go of anyway? Bones, flesh, blood, poop, Ugh. Anyway, I mean, yeah, of course we want a healthy, good body. We want to take care of it. But really, it's nothing to cling to. It's aging all the time. When it's dead, nobody wants it. Nobody wants it. Put it in the ground or burn it. So, I don't know if that's helpful or not, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I don't want to gross you out and scare you to death. But I know you're tougher than that. Yeah.
Zopa,
Mm-hmm.
I am incurably happy.
Yeah, I think did it get turned on? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there you
I am incurably happy
Yay.
most of the time,
Yeah.
with just a few little lapses into something else.
Yeah.
I have a rotten body,
Yeah.
and it's in pain pretty much all the time these days, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I know I'm heading towards worm fodder.
Yeah, we
So
all
I
are.
always get comforted when you talk about nobody wants the body after it's gotten old and nasty.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I feel like I am.
Yeah.
That's not really a question, but it's just a sort of, hello, Zopa, this is how I feel right now.
Yeah. Except, you appear to us as quite beautiful. And I think I'm not the only one that says that.
Well,
so,
that's weird.
well,
Hey,
it could
I look
be-
in the mirror and I don't get it.
Yeah. I think it's something about spirit, the inner Tara that shines out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, yeah. And, when I say beautiful, like, Kempo Lodrodonyo, he's gorgeous, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but, if you took all the fancy robes off and just stood him there in a suit, most Americans would say, oh, a little short, fat guy, who's got kind of dark skin, Nothing to write home about.
Nothing special.
Nothing to write home
very
about.
special.
But
I think he'd shine through even in a suit.
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. But you know what my point is.
Yeah. And thank you for that. That's very kind of you to say that.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but my grandma and my aunts, they got more beautiful as they got older. They just got so beautiful. And my mom, too, who was a very mean mom. Oh, my God, she was so mean when we were little. And as she got older, she just softened. And gosh, I was with her last few weeks of life, and she was funny, and she was just dear. And it just kind of started shining through. But it took 102 years. Yeah, and in her case, Mom would be laughing about this. it was good she lived that long, so she could go through all those, difficult clashes and finally become a more accepting being. And of course, we grew up too and got kinder to her. So got over some of the kerfuffles of the past. It was very helpful when I learned that was my karma. My mother was my karma. I was like, oh my God. What did I do to people last life? And I'm kind of joking, but it is something seriously to look at. Everything that happens to us is from karma. The good, the difficult, and the neutral. It doesn't come from anything else. Until we're fully enlightened beings, we are karmic beings. So it becomes harder and harder to blame others. As Geshe Zopa, he just made us laugh so much. He said, oh, we all say, and he had this big deep, I'm innocent. Why is this happening to me? That's how he'd teach about karma. Innocent. Implying, of course, there is no such thing. No, you brought it on yourself. Now you gotta live it out. This is true about the happy things too. So look at all the good karma we've created. Oh my gosh. Fairly healthy bodies, good minds, dharma, food, clothing, interesting jobs, good friends. It's just the list goes on and on. That also is from our past efforts. So we might as well keep going in a good direction so we can be happier and happier, and we help others that way. That makes sense? Yeah. What gets in the way? Does anything get in the way? Doubts? No, nothing's in the way. Then we can go home. I'm serious, we can. Unless anybody has another question or comment, we can fold up our tents and get on with our lives. Well, let's just give a minute and see. Anybody holding anything? Yeah, Jack. Visiting from Hawaii and a Dharma center there.
It's already on.
It's already on.
Okay, I guess this is in the news. I was first exposed to Buddhism courtesy of the military. I spent 5 years in Thailand.
Oh, yes.
So
We got to talk about Myanmar, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I know a lot, and there's several temples in Hawaii of Theravadins, Laotians, and Thais, and whatever. What I'm thinking about is that the Theravadin branch of Buddhism is kind of falling down a hole. There's extreme corruption in Thailand, and then there was that war in Sri Lanka between Buddhists and Hindus, and now there's this thing with the Rakhine. And somebody on Facebook put it out, wondering why the Dalai Lama didn't do anything about it. Of course, my big mouth, I just said, hey, the Dalai Lama doesn't tell Burmese what to do. And I said, in the same way as the Pope doesn't tell Protestants what to do, and the Shia don't tell the Sunnis what to do, and vice versa.
That's a good analogy.
And he didn't seem to understand that. But I don't know if there's any way of bringing these people to heal, because they've got some pretty bad monks over there in Myanmar who've been seen.
Yeah. Well, this came up this morning too, just background for people who don't know. In Myanmar, which was called Burma, a group of people are being forced out violently, and it's being led in many ways by so-called Buddhist monks. I mean, they are ordained Buddhist monks. They are not acting as Buddhists because Buddha would never teach any of that, like to expel people, kill them, beat them, all of which is happening. This morning we were talking about it, like how does one think about this? And I think it's important to realize a few things. Labels are labels, and I can label myself anything, but we have to look at what is the person functioning like. We can make an analogy to Christians in the U.S., you know. I remember being in a gay rights march, and my mother's really here tonight. My mother was marching with me, and she was kind of getting used to the idea of gay people. But she always kind of liked diversity. And one of the so-called Christians was on the corner with a big sign that said turn or burn, and was screaming kind of epithets at the gay people and their allies. And my mother went over to him and said, I'm a Christian and you are not a Christian, because what you're doing is not Christian. She was a little bit outspoken. And it was totally delightful. And she did this and then got back in the march and struck up a conversation with a drag queen. That was very interesting. I never knew whether she knew that she was talking to a drag queen. It didn't matter. She was enjoying herself. But my point is, you know, that person's calling himself a Christian, and if Jesus was standing there, Jesus would probably be like, sorry, dude, but you're not, you know, and but the piece that we landed on this morning, I think that's quite helpful, is to realize the suffering of those monks. These are people who have taken vows in the Buddhist tradition and are now in the process of violating all of those. And the karma from that, the suffering from that, including the suffering of how they are giving Buddhists a bad name. I mean, no one can give us a bad name, really. I mean, you show by your actions what you are, you know. But that's a lot of really difficult karma. So the suffering of the people that they're expelling from the country, who have been in that country for decades, from what I read, and but they're Muslim, and expelling them and doing it violently, and then doing it while they're in robes and being called Buddhist monks. I mean, we have to remember that on the Bodhisattva path, you know, we don't distinguish so much between oppressors and victims. Both suffer terribly. Both suffer terribly. Often the victim is in the process of ending some kind of karma. You know, they get killed, they get tortured. They're in the process of ending it, but the oppressor is starting a whole nother wheel for themselves. And according to the classic teachings on karma, what will happen to them will be similar. It may not be the very same thing, but it will be similar. If you kill, then short life. You know, if you steal, you will experience poverty and being stolen from. So it's just kind of you know, you can almost feel more sorry for the oppressor. And I told the story this morning of one of my best teachings that I needed and got from my teacher. My stepson, who I helped raise from baby time, he was killed violently and unexpectedly in Ecuador by by a young man there. They had gotten into a deal, not over drugs. Max didn't do that, but he loved business deals. And they were buying a building and got into a terrible dispute. And he had known this young man, Emilio, for a few years. And he didn't realize, none of us did, what kind of life Emilio really had. And Emilio shot and killed him over money. And so this was an incredible shock to our whole extended family. And I, actually the very day it happened, I called my teacher at Sravasti Abbey and told her and asked her how to think about this. And she said, well, first of all, you need to, of course, do your grieving and take care of yourself and your family. But as quickly as you can, put your mind into a kind of space of joining all parents who lose their sons to violence. And as soon as she said that, I calmed down, because it was like all the parents that lose their sons in wars, in gang shootings, in, accidents, it's huge. You lose these 20-something-year-old guys who take big risks. My other son took big risks and ended up injured, not dead. And but in that age time, and that really helped my mind, because I realized I was joining a huge group of people suffering just the same, and beginning to wish for them that they were free of it. And then she said to me, and this one really got me, she said, you can also think, is it easier to be the parent of the boy that got killed or of the boy who murdered someone? I was just stunned. I thought, oh my God, those parents who I hadn't thought about at all, who now have to relate to their son, and he has murdered someone point blank and is on his way to prison. And my heart just was like, oh my God, that seems so much worse. So it's that thing of, Emilio has started a karma that's a big wheel that he will need to go through, including the prison time, and who knows if he got rehabilitated. We've lost touch. But for Max, that suffering's over, done. We can pray for him to have a good human life. But so it really taught me something quite deep about the oppressor, the one that appears as the oppressor and the one that appears as a victim, and how much more complex that is than that there's a good guy and a bad guy and a victim, and, it's much more complicated than that. And the point on the Bodhisattva path is to hold the compassion equally for all. So my teacher was really guiding me towards more equanimity about it. It was good. And it's still very painful for me, that whole situation. And it's been 8 years now. It still seems very present. And sometimes I drive by where Max used to work and I still break into tears. But he's gone on, his consciousness is in some other form now. And I send, all kinds of good wishes towards that way, and remember the goodness that he brought into the world. Even in his short life, he was quite a good young man, confused, but basically kind. So this is how we think about these things. And we have to be very careful. The one thing to be very careful is not to make sides. This one side is right, this one's wrong, because that perpetuates. That's the whole thing. So anytime I'm even tempted to get into sides, I know I'm going down the rabbit hole, Just back up and work on the compassion for all. They're all suffering beings. Yeah, Stan, you're going to need the mic.
I understand what you say about not taking sides. This is how we have to take care of our minds.
Mm-hmm.
But the situation, there is a real situation,
Mm-hmm.
and to not take sides in a way is to say, okay, this 320,000 people, it's fine if they go and
No, that's not taking sides in the mind. You're right. We don't take sides in the mind. We see everyone suffering, different ways, all suffering. What we do with our speech and our actions is a different story. We have to come from the view, the pure view of they're all suffering, they've all been my mother, my kind brother in the past. That will affect what action we take. Mm-hmm. So you see, the Dalai Lama is the perfect example. He comes with that view. He doesn't go to war against the Chinese. He still acts very effectively diplomatically. He goes around the world, he gets his allies, he works to change, he constantly reaches out to the Chinese for dialogue. So he doesn't do nothing, but he doesn't go to war. Mm-hmm. Does that address the difference?
Yeah,
we still have to act. Yeah, we still have to act. And we have to act on the side of justice and kindness. Justice is a tricky word, though, because the ones that are expelling them thinks that is just. And I think it's not just.
Yeah, well, the white supremacists in Charlottesville thought that their cause was
cause
just.
Is just. Yeah, well, that's my point. It's tricky. Justice is tricky, but kindness is not tricky. And standing up for truth and taking some action is not tricky. So it's good to whatever support organizations who are supporting the ones that are being expelled, or support organizations that are working towards dialogue. But we wouldn't send money for an armed, assault on them. That's what I'm saying by taking sides. It's hard because our emotions grow very heated and also very anxious and fearful. And if we act out of that, we often continue the confusion. Yeah. So sometimes it's good for a little bit to research, sit, I always thought, when 911 happened and they landed all the planes and shut down all the airports, I don't know if you remember, it was that very strange day. Nothing was flying. And part of me felt, what a relief. Let's just do this. Let's just do this for a while and keep our shield up, and then have an incredible dialogue of what should we do. Now, that would have been a not taking sides. Let's talk about what happened, why did it happen, who are these people that are so angry at us, why, but still keep ourselves safe. And instead, what did we do? Pick a side and go bomb. And it wasn't even a side that was a side. We made up a side, go bomb Afghanistan. It was so interesting. I was like, well, we could have picked, any old country. Let's just bomb anywhere. It almost was that ridiculous. No weapons of mass destruction, and let's bomb Afghanistan. Wow. But the point is, so quick to take a side. There's an enemy. Shoot, So this happens in our own minds. Yeah. Okay. I think we may be done and ready to dedicate. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share with you.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
Thank you. Wednesday evening is Chenrezig, and you're welcome to come, whether you've ever even done it before. So maybe we'll see you then.